So what happened in the world of multifamily residential in Las Vegas this past month? Well, let's find out. I am Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group, and this is the Las Vegas real estate market update for resale condos and townhomes. This is the companion video to the market update that I do every month for single family residences. This one focuses more specifically on multifamily, in particular condos and then townhomes. And I segregate those into two separate categories because they're actually two distinct populations of housing type. I don't mean population as in people, but rather I mean in regard to statistical grouping, combining condos and townhomes into one set, or frankly talking about all real estate, single family condos and townhomes together, gives you a misunderstanding of what's actually going on in the market, because these are not all the same. They are distinct populations of housing type, and therefore we treat them that way in my market update video. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right into the numbers. Now remember, this is for December of 2022, which means I'm looking at the data from November of 2022. The comparison month over month is October of 2022 to November of 2022. The year over year comparison is November of 2021 through the end of November of 2022. And of course, on price, I'll also look at year to date, January 1st through November 30th of this year. All right, first we look at condos. So what went on in the condo market? First, price. Price came down. Now, everybody's been talking about how prices have just been collapsing. They're going to be, they will be, they are, and they will be in the future, according to so many of the people that you talk to or listen to or read from. And they're all just simply not correct. They've got their particular opinions, and they wish their opinions to be, I guess, interesting and informative to you. They just don't happen to be correct. So how can I say that? A price came down? Well, price came down $2,000, came down 0.9% from $222,000 at the end of October to $220,000 at the end of November. So in reality, prices were approximately flat. Yes, they came down 0.9%. And year over year, we were up. We were actually still up pretty considerably in the condo market. We're up from $204,000 at the end of November of 2021 through to $220,000 at the end of November of this year. That's up 7.8%. And just for a quick comparison, that's as opposed to up 1.2% for single family houses. So the condo market's in stronger shape than the single family housing market. In fact, if you've watched the single family video, and if you've not, you should go watch it because it contains some additional details that I don't get into in the multifamily video, the condo and townhome video. I mentioned in the single family video that we were starting to see some level of divergence between the price per foot and the median sale price. The price per foot had come down, and had actually come down lower than the median sale price had come down, which suggests if we look at the internal distribution of the data, we actually are seeing stronger activity in the lower half of the market than we are in the upper half of the market. And part of that's predicated on affordability concerns, desire to make sure you're not overpaying, even though the market's not actually going down. But it means that the properties that are priced sort of below that median single family home, $425,000 at the end of November of 2022, are doing a little bit better in the market than those that are priced higher. And so, of course, condos with the median sale price in November of $220,000, well, that is definitely below the $425,000 median for a single family home, where the below that median was stronger. And we're seeing that manifest itself in the condo market, where prices have come down from the peak at the end of May, but have not come down as far as the 11.4% correction since the end of May in the single-family home market. And so we're still up 7.8% year over year, as opposed to single-family homes being up only 1.2%. Now, one other data point here is the year-to-date, especially as we get closer to the end of the year. This is interesting because it's what's happened over the prior full 11 months, since January 1st through the end of November. We are up from 215, so we're up $5,000 year to date, or we're up 2.3% year to date here at the end of the 11th month. So that's just a little bit below actually normal price appreciation. So if we were to draw a trend line through housing price appreciation over long periods of time, we see that trend line come in between 4 and 5%. That's the long-term trend for growth of housing prices. And we're up year to date at 2.3%. So we're coming in well above half of that normal trend amount. We're coming in obviously a little below trend, but we're up 2.3% over the past 11 months. All right, now, what about units sold? We've seen the market slow considerably. We've seen activity come down very dramatically, even though prices are holding up pretty strongly. Units sold at 252, that's down 2.7% from the 259 that sold in October. But interestingly, right, so this is down. It is the lowest sales volume since February of 2016, with the exception of a month during the pandemic. So we're actually at low volume here. We're down 50.2% from last year's 506. Of course, we've been below last year's activity all year because last year, 2021, had record high volume. This has been low, but we're now actually not just low relative to last year. We've come down and we're actually low relative to historical points in time in the Las Vegas condo market and single family housing market and townhome market. So volume of activity is low. Now remember, we always get a seasonal pattern every year. November, December, January are the lowest months of every year for closings, for sales that have actually closed, also for contract writings, also interestingly for new into market. But what this means is we were seeing both a seasonal slowdown and we're seeing a secular slowdown because of overall issues taking place in the economy. I think this is going to probably continue over the next 1 to 2 months, where we're going to see very low sales volume. Okay, what about for sale? This is inventory. This is condos that are sitting in the market ready to receive offers, right? Seller has decided that they should list their property and they're looking actively for buyers. There were 1,017 condos for sale at the end of November of 2022. That's down. It's down 14%, 14.0% from the 1,183 condos that had been listed for sale at the end of October. It's up from last year when we had incredibly low inventory. It's up 77.8% from the 572 that were in inventory last year, for sale inventory. Now, interestingly, this 1,017, we're actually at about 70% of the 10-year norm for what inventory should be. So we're below. We're still in a low inventory market. Even at this 1,017, we're at about 70% of normal. And interestingly, we now have a definitive downtrend in place in inventory in the market. Even though we've got, and this is significant to think about, even though we've got a low number of transactions, which means there's a low number of buyers who are looking. No buyers, no transactions. We now see inventory coming down, and it's coming down at a rate that suggests that sellers are withdrawing from the market. They're not just not coming in, they're actually withdrawing. They're letting their listings expire, or they're withdrawing their listings directly prior to expiration. Now, that's rather interesting. It means that sellers are leaving this market, and because inventory is actually coming down, it means sellers are leaving this market more quickly than buyers are leaving this market. That sets us up for future inventory problems. We're only at 70% of normal inventory, and sellers are leaving this market more quickly than buyers are leaving this market. Something to pay significant attention to as we go forward, as we start into and go through 2023. And I'll have my market forecast video, which is combined for single family condos and townhomes. I'll have that coming out hopefully by the end of this week, but certainly by the beginning of next week. That's what I'm forecasting for the market in 2023. All right, newly listed resale condos. This number is interesting. It's 302. So this is new into market, meaning that a homeowner, has decided to list their condo for sale. It goes into inventory from which it can be sold, right? Inventory is coming down. Well, newly listed, 302 in November of 2022, that's down 100 units. It's down from 402 that came in October of this year. It's also down from last year. It's down from the 417, down 27.6% from the number that came in November of last year, right? So seasonally, we'd be slowing down at this time of year. But last year, with incredibly low inventory, relatively low listings, we're down 27.6% from where we were then. Strong downtrend in place in terms of new listings. And this is actually the lowest number of new listings since July 2008 for condos. There is very little coming into this market. So newly listed, which builds inventory, down very considerably, down actually just about 25%, 24.9% from the 402 in October to the 302 in November. Strong downtrend in place, causing inventory now to actually be showing a downtrend in place of lower and lower levels of inventory. So one other statistic I've been looking at over the past about a year, and that is back on market. 103 condos that had gone into contract came back into the market, meaning they fell out of contract for various reasons. That's 29.0% of condos fell out of contract. Sales that had been written that then came back into the market. Now that is down. I was expecting to see a small downtrend in the very elevated back on market numbers that we've been seeing last year in 2021. We had been well over 35% last year, and we've now come down to 29.0% of contracts. In fact, we were at 35.6% of condo contracts written for closing in October. 35.6% of them had come back in the market. November, we saw 29.0% come back into the market. What's causing elevated back on market right now? There are still appraisal problems out there, especially where appraisers may be thinking the market's getting softer than what it really is. But what we're seeing mostly now is increasingly elevated numbers of failed inspections, failed due diligence contingencies, where a buyer has a property inspected, requests repairs, and sellers are being intransigent in their willingness to engage in that repair activity. And that's causing buyers to leave their contracts, get their earnest money deposit back, because it's a written contingency over which they can get their earnest money deposit back. and leave that contract because there's actually inventory they can go look at or they can delay. And so sellers who are making that decision are making really big mistakes. Preserving contracts right now is really important. All right, so let's switch to townhomes, but first, before I do, please subscribe if you've not already. Hit the like button. Please let your colleagues, friends, family, whomever you think may benefit from these videos and the analysis that I do behind the data. Please let them know, share the links with them. I'd be happy to talk with them and help them through their real estate activities, just as I'd be happy to talk with you through your real estate activity. Now, townhomes. Townhomes, separate category of multifamily housing. Townhomes came down in price in November. They came down 3.1% from $320,000 to $310,000. Now, townhome pricing had looked quite strong over the prior 4 months. They were basically flat over the prior 4 months. We're down a little bit from the peak, but we came down $10,000 at the median this past month. That's significant. It's down 3.1%. I don't think there's any long-term collapsing kind of issue here, but this was a bit of a reset. Now, this reset happens for a couple reasons. One is there's some weakness in the pricing in the market right now. But two is very few numbers of townhomes actually transact during a particular month. We'll look at that when we get to sales volume, but it means that not only does each townhome contribute a significant percentage to the volume activity that took place, but it means that there's some random element that works its way into the data that a townhome may close this month or next month or the prior month, depending on when the contract is ready to be closed. And if that townhome had come in differently in terms of timing, it could have pulled the median sale price somewhat higher or somewhat lower. And so last month we saw townhome prices actually go up slightly. I suspect what happened is there was a little bit of pull forward from what could have closed in early November, actually closed in December. And so those that closed a little bit early were coming in a little bit higher than median price. As well, we may have had some transactions that would have closed in November slip into December because of the holidays, because of Thanksgiving and banks being closed, and the county recorder being closed. And so some of those also may have been at a little bit higher price point, which caused the November numbers to come down and look a little bit weaker than they may have been. It's not surprising that prices would have come down a little bit. They had come down in the single family housing market 2.1%. Last month they had come down in condos 0.9%, but townhomes a little bit bigger price change at 3.1%. Now, nonetheless, we are still up 3.7% from November of 2021, which was $299,000. So we're still up $11,000 from that. Again, single family up 2.1%, townhomes outperforming as a category of housing unit in terms of price over this past 12 months, November of 2021 to November of 2022. And year to date, we're up from $307,000 to $310,000. So we are up 1.0% year to date. Condos were up 2.3%, and single family homes, we were exactly flat. So clearly the multifamily housing segments, condos and townhomes, are both outperforming single family houses at this particular point in time. Now, what about sold? I've noted in multiple of my videos that anything could be priced at whatever if it's not selling, right? It's just a random price. But there's another point to remember with this, and that is the units that sold, no matter how many they were, sold at that median sale price. So I'm not giving you median list price, people could list their houses at whatever. I'm giving you actually sold. So even though sales volume has come down, which we'll see in just a second, those units that are selling at this median price, which means that we've not seen significant pricing decreases in this market, even as it's really slowed down. So how slow is it? Sold units, townhome units, November of 2022, 181 is down 1 unit from 182 that we saw closed in October. That's actually down 0.5%, because we're talking about such a small number of transactions that each transaction is worth 0.5% of the overall market for townhomes. So we're down 0.5% in transactions, but we're down 1 townhome. Now, we're also down 46.9% in transactions in sold units from the 341 that we had last year. Now, again, remember, last year is a little bit weird comparison because last year had the greatest number of transactions of any year we've seen in the Las Vegas Valley. But November of last year was getting to the end of that year, and so we're starting to see, wait, we're actually going low in terms of transaction volume now. It's not just low relative to last year, it's low overall. And in fact, we're at the lowest non-pandemic month since January of 2016 on townhome transactions. Lowest since February of 2016 on condo transactions. So it is really slow out there. It's legitimately slow. There are fewer contracts being written. There are fewer contracts being closed. All right, so what about for sale? The inventory in this market. 706 townhomes sitting in inventory right now at the end of November, waiting to be sold. That's down 14.0% from the 821 townhomes that were for sale at the end of October. That represents a strong multi-month trend of declining inventory that is now in place. We are up from very low inventory last year, right? The entirety of 2021, in fact, October of 2020, all the way through the first month of 2022, we were sitting at incredibly low inventory numbers. So we're up 91.3% from the 361 that were in inventory last year, but we're at only 75% of normal inventory. So for all of that build that you've been reading about in units for sale that have taken place this year, yeah, we've got more than we had last year, but we're still only at 75%. And we just came down 14% from the inventory that we had the prior month. Now remember, inventory can be depleted in several ways. One, there can be a sale that pulls something out of inventory. Two, there could be a cancellation. And three, an expiration of a listing. So a cancellation or withdrawal is where a seller decides, I've changed my mind, I'm leaving the market. I'm going to keep my property. An expiration is the seller had given their agent some number of months, usually 6, sometimes a little less, sometimes more, to sell their property, and it did not sell in that time frame, and so the listing expires and pulls out of MLS that way. So sales or withdrawn or expired. And of course, we get new inventory coming in, newly listed resale townhomes. Newly listed resale townhomes, 192 in November, down 36.8% from the 304 newly listed townhomes in October. It's a really dramatic drop off. We're below normal, and this is the lowest new listing number since December 2017. We're down 40.0% from newly listed last November. This is the lowest non-December number. It's an interesting point here. Lowest non-December number since November of 2008. Now, the reason I look at a non-December number here is because December, if you look at the volatility chart, which is actually about transactions or listings or pendings or cancellations, we see the lowest number of new listings in a very strong pattern, seasonally impacted, to become the lowest every single year in December. There is almost not an exception that December is the lowest number of new listings. So that we're at the lowest non-December since November 2008 is really phenomenal. November of 2008, the valley was about 27% smaller in terms of population. These are really low numbers of new units coming in. The inventory is 75% of normal, and it is dropping because sellers are leaving this market. They're leaving this market more quickly than buyers are leaving this market. And that has real implications going forward in time. All right, now the one other statistic, back on market in November of 2022 for resale townhomes, 66. That means 66 contracts had been written that should have closed in November. Didn't switch between months, didn't close at all. They dropped out of contract. That's 26.7% of contracts dropped out, went back into the market. That's down. It's down from October's 32.2%, but we're still talking more than a quarter of contracts are failing. Actually written contracts, buyer makes an offer, seller accepts the offer, and those contracts are failing. The property goes back into the market. Seller has to start all over. Of course, buyer also has to start all over, but there's more inventory right now. There's more options right now for a buyer who's having to start over. There are fewer buyers for that seller to be going after, to try to target, to try to sell their property to. So in particular for sellers, keeping a contract in place, really, really important. Sellers that are letting contracts get canceled for reasons that may be in a seller's control, such as a bad response on an inspection, is a seller making a really big strategic error right now. All right, so that is the data for condos and for townhomes resales in the Las Vegas Valley for November of 2022. I am Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group. At the Chong Miller Group, we help people buy and sell homes, including condos and townhomes. We're investor friendly. We also work with direct buyers for their personal residences. Please, if you have comments, reach out, let us know. If you want us to help you, reach out, let us know. We'd be happy to sit down and talk with you and figure out if we're the best solution for you. See you on the next video. Thank you.